I've been driving long haul for about 12 years now. When you spend that much time on the road, especially the graveyard shifts, you start to see things. Usually it's just your mind playing tricks, the white dog or fatigue or shadows stretching under the high beams. But what happened to me 3 years ago on a desolate stretch of the Nevada desert just outside of Tonopah wasn't a trick of the light. It was roughly 3 a.m. The road was a black ribbon cutting through nothingness. No other headlights, no cell service, just me and 40 tons of freight. I was cruising at about 70 miles per hour when my high beams caught something standing right on the shoulder. At first, I thought it was a hitchhiker, but as I got closer, my gut feeling told me something was horribly wrong. The figure was tall, maybe 7 feet, and incredibly thin. It was standing perfectly still, facing the road, but it wasn't wearing clothes. As I flew past, my lights illuminated its lower half for a split second. It didn't have human legs. They were thick, covered in coarse gray hair, and bent backward at the joints, like the hind legs of a goat. I didn't stop. I didn't even tap the brakes. A cold wave of dread washed over me, and I just gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I kept checking my mirrors, expecting to see it running behind me, but there was only darkness. About 5 minutes passed. I was finally starting to breathe again when I heard it. Thump. It was a heavy, metallic sound. It came from directly above my head on the roof of the cab. My heart stopped. I told myself it was just a loose wind deflector, or maybe a bird. Then came the next one. Thump, thump, thump. It was a rhythmic, heavy pacing. Whatever had been on the side of the road was now on top of my trailer. I looked at my speedometer. I was doing 75 miles per hour. There is no physical way a person or even an animal could jump onto a moving tractor trailer at that speed, let alone stay on it. The sound moved from the cab to the top of the trailer. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of hooves hitting the aluminum roof. I could hear the metal groaning under the weight. It started running. It was sprinting back and forth along the length of the 53-foot trailer while I was barreling down the highway. I was paralyzed with fear. I wanted to slam on the brakes, but I was terrified that if I stopped, it would come down to the driver's window. I just kept driving, staring straight ahead, praying for a gas station or a way station, anything with lights. Suddenly, the thumping stopped. There was a loud final bang near the back of the trailer, and then dead silence. I didn't stop until I hit a 24-hour truck stop 60 miles later. I stayed in the cab until the sun came up. When I finally climbed out to check the roof, I found 3 deep, narrow dents in the aluminum. They were shaped exactly like oversized cloven hooves. I don't take that route anymore. Some things are better left in the desert.
This happened last October on a narrow 2-lane highway in rural Pennsylvania. I was hauling a load of timber, and the sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving the woods in that weird gray twilight where everything looks like a silhouette. I noticed the white van about 20 miles back. It was an old, beat-up Chevy Express, no windows on the sides, just solid white. It was trailing me at a distance that felt unsettling. Whenever I sped up, it sped up. When I slowed down to let it pass, it stayed glued to my rear bumper. I tried the trucker's signal, flashing my lights to show it was clear to overtake, but the driver didn't budge. We stayed like that for nearly an hour. The van was so close I couldn't even see its headlights in my mirrors anymore, just the white hood reflecting my own taillights. My phone was dead, and this stretch of road was notorious for being a dead zone anyway. I started feeling a sharp prickle of anxiety in my chest. This wasn't just a bad driver, this was intentional. Eventually, we hit a long, straight stretch. I dropped a gear and floored it, trying to create some distance. The van roared to life, matching my speed instantly. Then, it pulled out into the opposing lane as if to pass, but it didn't pass. It hovered right alongside my cab. I turned my head to look at the driver, but the windows were tinted pitch black. I couldn't see a single thing inside. Suddenly, the van swerved hard to the right, slamming into the side of my truck. The impact was violent. My steering wheel yanked to the right, and because of the weight of the timber, I couldn't recover. I went off the shoulder, plowing through a guardrail and sliding down a shallow embankment into a thicket of trees. I sat there for a second, dazed. The smell of pine and leaking coolant filled the air. My head was bleeding, but I was alive. I looked up through the shattered windshield and saw the white van. It had spun out and stopped about 30 yards away, idling in the middle of the road. I reached under my seat and grabbed my heavy-duty folding knife. I didn't know if this was a road rage incident or an attempted robbery, but I wasn't going down without a fight. I climbed out of the wrecked cab, my legs shaking, and slowly approached the van. "Hey!" I yelled, my voice cracking. "What the hell is wrong with you?" No answer. The engine was still humming, the exhaust puffing white smoke into the cold air. I reached the driver's side door and gripped the handle. I pulled it open, ready to face whoever was inside. The van was empty. There was nobody in the driver's seat, no one in the back. The keys were in the ignition, and the gear was still in drive, held in place by the crash. I stood there, completely baffled, the dead silence of the woods pressing in on me. Then I smelled it. It wasn't coolant or gasoline. It was a heavy, sweet, metallic scent. I looked over toward the brush where the van had clipped the trees. Something caught the light of the van's interior lamp. I walked over, my heart hammering against my ribs. There, hidden just beneath the low-hanging branches, were 3 heavy black industrial trash bags. One of them had been torn open during the accident. I didn't have to look closely to know what was inside. The sight of a human hand, pale and bloodless, reaching out from the plastic is an image I'll never be able to erase. The police found 4 bodies in total. They never found the driver of that white van. They couldn't even find a footprint leading away from the crash site. It was as if the van had been driving itself, carrying its grim cargo to a final resting place. I gave up the long-haul life after that. Now I work in a warehouse. It's boring, and the pay isn't as good, but at least I don't have to look in my rearview mirror and wonder who or what is following me.
I'm a substitute teacher. About a year ago, I accepted a high-paying 3-month contract in a town called Cinder Falls. It was located deep in the Appalachian Mountains, so remote it didn't even show up on Google Maps. The recruiter told me it was a private, self-sustained community. At the time, I just thought it was a town for people who wanted to live off the grid. When I arrived, The first thing I noticed was the silence. No birds, no dogs barking, just a heavy, suffocating stillness. The villagers were even stranger. They didn't speak to me. If I waved, they'd just stop and stare with blank, hollow expressions until I passed. I was given a small cabin near the edge of the woods. On my second night, I went exploring and found a large, corrugated metal warehouse behind the schoolhouse. The door was slightly ajar. Being curious and honestly looking for some sign of human life, I stepped inside. My breath hitched. The warehouse wasn't full of supplies. It was filled with backpacks, suitcases, and stacks of clothing. I walked deeper and saw a row of desks. On one, there was a laptop, an older model covered in thick dust. Next to it was a photo ID. It was for a man named Mark, a teacher who, according to the records I'd seen, had resigned and moved back east 3 years ago. But his car keys were there, his wallet was there, his wedding ring was sitting right on the desk. A wave of pure dread hit me. I realized these weren't donations. These were the leftovers of people who had come here for the same job I had. I didn't wait. I ran back to my truck, threw my gear in, and floored it toward the only road out of town. I drove for what felt like hours, but the landscape wasn't changing. The same twisted oak tree kept appearing every 5 minutes. I was gasping for air, paralyzed with fear, when I saw it. The road didn't just end, it stopped. I slammed on the brakes just inches from the edge. I got out of the truck and walked to the front bumper. The asphalt simply terminated into a jagged vertical cliff that dropped off into a white, bottomless void. It wasn't a natural canyon. It looked like a physical glitch in reality, like the world hadn't been rendered past that point. I looked back behind me. In the distance, I could see the faint lights of Cinder Falls flickering in the dark. I could see the silhouettes of the villagers standing in the middle of the road, just watching me. They weren't chasing me. They didn't have to. They knew there was nowhere else to go.
I'm a freelance photographer, and I specialize in hidden gems, places that haven't been touched by modern tourism. Last summer, I heard rumors of a village in the Pacific Northwest called Elohim. It was tucked away in a valley so deep that it only got about 4 hours of direct sunlight a day. When I arrived, I was struck by how beautiful it was. The houses were built from dark timber, and the gardens were overflowing with strange, pale flowers. But the atmosphere was unsettling. As I walked through the square with my camera, I noticed something. Every time I turned a corner, the people there would stop talking. Instantly. It wasn't a natural pause in conversation. It was an organized silence. They would just stand there, mid-gesture, and wait for me to pass before resuming their lives in total hush. By the afternoon, I'd had enough. The vibe was too midsummer for me. I walked back to the dirt path where I'd parked my Jeep, only to find a massive, rusted logging truck parked horizontally across the exit. It was blocked, completely. I went to the nearest house to ask someone to move it. The door was unlocked, so I stepped inside. The house was abandoned, the furniture covered in white sheets. On a small side table, I found a leather-bound notebook. I opened it to the last entry. The handwriting was frantic, the ink smeared. It was from a man named Ivan, a traveler who had gone missing 6 months prior. It read, "They don't use words because words are for the living. They just watch. They wait for you to stop moving. I tried to leave, but the truck is always there. Once you enter, they don't let you leave. If you are reading this, don't look them in the eyes. That's how they start the change." My blood turned to ice. I heard a floorboard creak behind me. I turned around and saw 3 of the villagers standing in the doorway. They weren't holding weapons. They didn't look angry. They were just silent. Their eyes were wide, fixed on mine, and they were beginning to smile in a way that didn't reach their eyes. I didn't think. I smashed the back window of the house and sprinted into the tree line. I spent 3 days wandering the dense forest, hearing nothing but the sound of my own breathing and the occasional rhythmic clapping coming from deep within the brush. I eventually found a logging trail that led to a highway. I didn't stop running until I flagged down a state trooper. When I told him about Elowin, he looked at me like I was insane. He told me that there hasn't been a town in that valley since the 1920s. I still have my camera, but when I developed the film from that day, the photos didn't show a beautiful village. They showed a graveyard with headstones where the houses should have been. And in every single frame, standing behind me in the shadows, was a man who looked exactly like the description of Ivan. I don't go hiking anymore. I stay where the lights are bright and the people are loud, because I know what happens when things get too quiet.
I've been working as a night security guard at a large mall in suburban Ohio for about 6 years. People always ask if it's creepy being in a building that size by yourself. Usually I tell them no, it's just boring. You walk your rounds, check the locks, and listen to podcasts. But last November, something happened that made me realize I was never actually alone in that building. It was around 2 a.m. I was doing my sweep of the second floor, right near the high-end department stores. Everything was dead silent, except for the hum of the HVAC system. As I passed a boutique called the Glass Closet, I saw something out of my corner of my eye. A small figure, about the size of a child, darted from the main aisle into the store's darkened entrance. My gut feeling immediately went into overdrive. We've had kids break in before for overnight challenges, so I pulled my phone out to take a photo of the intruder for my report before I called it in. I aimed my flashlight into the store and snapped a quick picture of the front window display where I thought I saw the movement. I didn't see anyone, just the usual row of expensive plastic mannequins dressed in winter coats. I figured I was just tired, maybe seeing shadows. I lowered my phone and looked at the photo I'd just taken to make sure it wasn't a glitch. As I pinched the screen to zoom in, a wave of unsettling dread washed over me. In the photo, the mannequin on the far left, a female figure with a blank, featureless face, wasn't looking forward like the others. Its neck was twisted at a sharp, impossible angle, staring directly into the camera lens. I looked up from my phone at the actual mannequin in the window. It was facing forward again, perfectly still, perfectly normal. I stood there, paralyzed with fear.
My brain was trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was a reflection, maybe it was just the angle. But then I heard a sound that made my heart drop. It was the soft, unmistakable click-clack of plastic feet hitting the marble floor, coming from inside the darkened store. I didn't investigate. I didn't call it in. I walked, not ran, because I didn't want it to chase me back to the security office and lock the door. I watched the monitors for the rest of the night, but I never saw that mannequin move again. I quit the next morning. There's something deeply wrong with things that look human but aren't, and I wasn't gonna wait around to find out what it wanted.
I've worked as a sanitation worker for the city for nearly a decade. You'd be surprised at the things people throw away. Perfectly good TVs, furniture, clothes. It's a finders keepers kind of job, and I've furnished half my house with curb fines. But 3 months ago, I picked up something I should have left in the gutter. It was a wheelchair. It looked brand new, high-end, chrome frame, black leather seat. It was sitting outside a house where an old man had recently passed away. Thinking I could sell it or give it to a veterans charity, I tossed it in the back of my truck and took it home. I put it in the spare bedroom at the end of the hallway. That night, my wife was working the night shift at the hospital. I was home alone, drifting off to sleep around midnight, when I heard a very specific sound. Squeak, squeak, squeak. It was the sound of unlubricated wheels moving on a hard floor. I froze. The sound was coming from the hallway. It was slow and deliberate. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Thump. The thump was the sound of the wheelchair hitting my bedroom door. I sat up in bed, my chest tight with dread. Then I heard a voice from the other side of the door. "Honey, can you open the door? I forgot my keys." It was my wife's voice. It sounded exactly like her, the same pitch, the same tired inflection she has after a long shift. I almost got out of bed to open it, but then I remembered. My wife had taken my car to work because hers was in the shop. I had the only set of house keys in my nightstand, and the front door was deadbolted from the inside. More importantly, she wasn't due home for another 6 hours. "Sarah?" I whispered, my chest tight with dread. Then the voice outside my door repeated the exact same words. "Hey, I'm right in the middle of a patient intake. Is everything okay?" I dropped the phone. The dead silence that followed was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. Then the wheelchair began to slam against the door. Bam, bam, bam. The chrome frame was denting the wood. I locked myself in the master bathroom and waited for the sun to come up. When I finally worked up the courage to open the bedroom door, the hallway was empty. The wheelchair was back in the spare room, exactly where I'd left it, but the leather seat was warm, as if someone or something had just been sitting there. I took that chair to the local landfill and watched the compactor crush it into scrap metal. I don't pick up things from the curb anymore. You never know what kind of history is attached to someone's belongings or what's looking for a new place to sit.
I'm a general contractor. Last year, I took a job through an anonymous listing to do some structural repairs on a cabin deep in the Appalachian Mountains, about 3 hours away from any major city. The pay was triple my usual rate, provided I stayed on site until the job was finished. The cabin was isolated. I mean, really isolated. No cell service, no neighbors, just miles of dense forest. On my second day, I had to crawl under the porch to check the foundation. While I was clearing away some debris, my hand brushed against something hard and smooth. I pulled it out, thinking it was a piece of PVC pipe. It wasn't. It was a small, bleached white bone. Then I found another, and another. They were too small to be a deer's. They looked unsettlingly human. I felt a cold pit of dread form in my stomach. I told myself it was just a local legend or some animal's kill site, but my gut feeling was screaming at me to leave. Before I could pack my tools, the sun went down and a thick fog rolled in. Around midnight, I was startled awake by the sound of a heavy diesel engine. A rusted, black pickup truck with no headlights on pulled into the clearing. 3 men got out. They didn't look like hikers or locals. They looked professional. One of them walked right up to the cabin door and tried the handle. I was standing in the dark kitchen, paralyzed with fear, clutching a framing hammer. I heard a soft, rhythmic tapping on the glass. Then, a voice, a low, gravelly whisper that cut through the dead silence. "We know you're in there, Roberto. The last guy didn't make it out either. Just open the door and make it easy." I realized then that the job posting wasn't real. The cabin wasn't being repaired. It was a trap. This wasn't a ghost story or a monster in the woods. This was something much worse. It was a collection point for human trafficking, and I was just the latest shipment. I didn't open the door. I climbed out of a tiny bathroom window in the back and ran into the woods. I didn't stop until I found a ranger station at sunrise. When the police went back to the cabin, it was completely empty. No tools, no truck, and most importantly, no bones under the porch. They had cleaned the site in 2 hours. I never went back to that part of the state. I don't take anonymous contracts anymore.
I've been an avid night fisherman for most of my life. There's a spot on the Black River in the Ozarks that's usually perfect, quiet, secluded, and full of bass. But 2 years ago, I saw something that ended my fishing hobby for good. It was around 1 a.m. I was sitting on a folding chair on the muddy bank when I noticed 2 small, red, glowing eyes reflecting in the water about 50 yards upstream. I thought it was an alligator or maybe a raccoon, but then the eyes rose up. A humanoid figure, easily 7 feet tall and slick with black mud, emerged from the water. Its limbs were thin and elongated, moving with a jerky, unnatural gait. I watched, breathless, as it crept toward a stray sheep that had wandered down to the water's edge to drink. The creature moved with a sudden, violent burst of speed. It grabbed the animal by the throat and dragged it back into the depths. The sounds that followed, the splashing, the tearing of flesh, and the wet, crunching noises were enough to make me vomit. I sat in the darkness, praying it hadn't seen me. Then the splashing stopped. The dead silence returned. After a few minutes, a new sound drifted across the water. It was the sound of a child, a young boy, crying and calling out, "Help! Someone help me! I'm lost!" The voice was perfect. It was heartbreakingly realistic. But it was coming from the exact spot where that creature had just disappeared under the surface. I realized it was mimicking the sounds it had probably heard from past victims to lure me toward the bank.
I didn't fall for it. I grabbed my gear and backed away, never taking my eyes off the water. As I reached my truck, the crying stopped abruptly. It was replaced by a deep, guttural hiss that sounded like steam escaping a pipe. I looked back one last time and saw those red eyes watching me from the reeds. It wasn't just an animal. It was something that knew how to hunt us. I don't go near the water after dark anymore. Sometimes when it rains, I think I can still hear that child's voice coming from the storm drains, but I know better than to look.